Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all today? I hope that everybody is doing fine and also that you are finding a little bit of joy, peace, and serenity amongst all of this craziness that's going on in the world, that I have to say. But there is always that peaceful sanctuary that we can return to within ourselves at any given time. Here in the United Kingdom, you know that I love to talk about the weather. It has been raining, I think, forever, but no, really, I'm exaggerating a little bit. It's been raining now for several weeks, and the plants do definitely need it. They need that nourishment and the water, as we all need that good energy. It's something that is so important, is good energy in our life. And it's not something that possibly we remember on a daily basis, but it's something that we do need to be reminded of, because we are energetic beings as well as being human beings. We all operate and vibrate on a certain level. So I was talking to somebody the other day, actually, and we spoke about this. And they said to me, do you know what, Mimi? Stay away from situations and people that don't resonate, that make you feel uncomfortable. And that's one of really the best pieces of advice that I can give also, is if it doesn't feel right, if you're not sure, then stay away and find that inner peace and be with those that actually give you that peace and make you feel joyful and comfortable. Because at the end of the day, life is really far too short to spend it in situations and with people that don't bring us that beautiful serenity and love in our life. Now, I am absolutely delighted to welcome back today's guest, who has been so popular with you all that I'm going to try and persuade him to do a podcast himself, and that is the brilliant Mir Abbas Ali. Mir is an acupuncturist, a martial arts master, and a Chinese medicine expert. After he graduated as an acupuncturist and in the Shaolin Arts, he started to train in the Taoist arts of Qigong, Neigong, Bagua, Tui Na, amongst many other arts and practices. Mir's expertise is with Chinese medicine and also with meditation, as well as the internal arts and spiritual matters. He is an expert in martial arts such as Escrima, Pencak Silat, and Systema, as well as the modern self-defense systems. He has represented Great Britain and has been filmed for many documentaries and news programs across the world. Mir has travelled across the globe to train with masters in places such as China, America, Malaysia, Europe, and New Zealand. He is the 7th Dan grade, which was presented to him by the International Southern Shaolin Five Ancestors Association in China. Mir has received many years of transmissions and training in the Taoist lineage of the energy arts, as well as regularly training with legendary Russian masters. He has travelled far and wide, and one such place that he has been to is New Zealand, where he learned from the true Maori warriors and healers who were generous to pass on their teachings to him from their family and lineages to help benefit people worldwide. And that is something that is a really privileged position to be in, because it's not shared. Such things are not shared with everybody. So that's important to know. Today, he shares more about his art and his absolutely wonderful wisdom that is helping people all over the world. Welcome back, Mir.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you for having me again.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very popular, I have to say. Will you ever do a podcast on your own?
I'm not too sure. I don't know. I'm not too sure. I think, luckily, you're willing to listen to me, but I'm not sure how many other people are. Maybe
Well,
the
so
people on
many
the
people
podcast,
are
but,
listening and want you back all the time and keep
well,
asking questions. So,
fine.
maybe never say never, as they say.
We'll never say never. I'll do it with you. That's about it. I think, yeah, that's it for now.
Oh, well, that's exactly like myself, where I said for so long, firstly, I didn't even know what a podcast was. And then I said, no, there's definitely no way I'm doing that. Absolutely no way. Oh, no, 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 no. And then all of a sudden, one day I woke up and I had this inspiration in my heart. And I thought, I'm going to do a podcast. I couldn't even believe it myself. So we've got to be open. We've got to be open.
Yes, yeah, always be open. You're right. Yeah, I'll be open
how
to
are
anything.
you? Tell me, how are you? How's things in your part of the world?
Very good, very good. Like yourself, kind of hoping for some sunshine that lasts more than half a day. But it's been very wet and windy here. Obviously, but yeah, no, but been really well and kind of enjoying things as usual. Kind of trying to enjoy the weather, even though it's rain, and just be grateful for the water that's coming down and watering the garden.
Yeah, so it's true because then we don't have to water the garden, do we?
Yeah, that's fine. That's one job I don't have to do, but now I have to do other jobs, which is weed the garden, because the weeds, of course, have grown very well and happy too. So it's just but then it makes it easier for me to dig the garden, to put new plants in. So it's just it's full of good things.
It is, and it's the balance of life, isn't it? But before we go into that, which is interesting because that is the key, I think, to life, is finding this delicate balance, like the spirit level. It's so delicately fine. And we're all sort of struggling in our own way to find that. And I think it's important, which you're going to talk about today, I know, ways to do that. But tell us a little bit, just so that the listeners can be reminded, and for new listeners as well, what it is that you do.
Okay, so essentially, I guess my full-time living is of an acupuncturist or someone who practices Chinese medicine. So there's, even though I'm a qualified herbalist, I tend to kind of use that less because I focus my specialty seems to be much more using my hands and acupuncture needles to help people in clinic. So I work in the clinic using Chinese medicine to help as many people as I can. I also love to teach the arts you mentioned during the introduction. I try and focus much more on the health practices now of the martial arts and of Qigong and Neigong and meditation, less so on teaching people how to fight. I will teach an awful lot of people self-defense, and those are much shorter kind of day courses or week-long courses, or they're much more important. And I tend to focus on the self-defense aspects for women and children, and more increasingly men. I avoided men for a long time. Whereas the kind of teaching of the arts, for some reason, has declined because the modern life basically has less time to learn the old arts. Which is, it's a shame, but it's the way things go. So yeah, my time is split mainly between medicine and what one of my teachers calls reverse medicine or martial arts. So it's just we've got both sides of the coin, because one of the things that I realized really quickly, or not too quickly, but basically about 10 years into my training in the Shaolin Arts, was that if I'm going to learn how to break people, I should learn how to fix people too.
That's interesting.
So
yes,
it was an important thing. I think there was a turning point when I came from a really old school training where we basically, there was lots of sparring, no gloves, no gum shield, no really safety measures.
Yeah.
But what we had is you would train for 4 or 5 hours, and then at the end we would fight. And then basically what happened is on one side of the hall, all the senior people stood up, who were all old school fighters. They were amazing fighters and trained fighters as well. So they were good street fighters and good trained fighters. So there might be 6, 7, 8, 9 of them stood up on one side of the hall. And then anyone who wasn't senior, basically beginners, or anyone who'd been practicing less than 10 years were up against sat down. And then you'd have to line up in front of you'd stand up and line up in front of those seniors, and you would fight. And then basically you'd get knocked down, you'd get hit, whatever. So we would line up, bow, and then move to the left, and the person at the top left would move to the bottom of the queue, and then we'd have to fight the next person. And that basically went on until we fought all of those 10 seniors. And then you would sit down after basically being beaten up by 5, 10 people, very experienced people. And then the next group of people would stand up. And if there weren't enough people, you would choose to stand up or not, and fight again. And then you'd go through the whole process again. And of course, did that for years and years.
And what martial arts was that?
Oh, that was the Nan Shaolin Wuzhu trend. That was the Southern Shaolin Kung Fu.
Okay.
So yeah, that was basically it. And, it was hard training, it was hard everything. But fortunately or unfortunately, people don't want to do that kind of training anymore, because we would start the class with 1 hour of warm-up, and then you'd have to do kind of skills training, and then there'd be partner training where you're conditioning your arms and your legs, and then how to kick and punch, and then there's a whole fighting at the end. Then there'd be weapons as well. There'd be weapons fighting and training. And then maybe if there was time or an inclination, we would stay an extra hour or two, and then basically continue more weapons training or internal skills training, whether it was Qigong or more meditation. So there were good times, but very, very difficult training, which people aren't really into anymore, don't want to do.
Do you think that's just in the West here? Or do you think?
Yeah, I think it's the West. I think there were small groups of people who do want to do that, and so you will get very small, dedicated groups who will. But times have changed. People want different things from martial arts. So before, let's say in the 70s and 80s, the days of people like Bruce Lee, etc., kind of kung fu, Chinese martial arts were very much at the pinnacle of things, and karate. And of course, judo was brilliant too. So you had these top 3 kind of martial arts that people saw as the answer to everything for self-defense, spirituality, and that kind of thing. But now times have changed, and if people want spirituality, there are much more things available to them. So they might want to do some yoga, or they might want to do some Buddhist chanting, or so they've got that for spirituality. And if they want to do something that might strengthen the body, they might go to the gym, or do something like CrossFit or some type of weight training. And if they want to learn how to fight, then they might do something like mixed martial arts, cage fighting type training. Or they might want to do, let's say, a short course in something like self-defense, the kind of things I teach, like street defense. You might want to learn that in 3 hours or 2 hours on a Sunday as a one-off, or maybe as a few sessions.
So that has its place, doesn't it?
It has its place. So that
it has its place, but it's not really the real McCoy, is it?
No,
I mean, going to the gym has its merits, and it's good to have this exercise. But what I find a lot of people say to me, Mir, that go to the gym, it becomes a little bit of an obsession, and it's a bit like eating, I suppose, food that's not nutritious. So it tastes good, but you're hungry after an hour type of thing.
Yes.
So there's not that real spiritual deep connection. And I think that's why then people get so obsessed with it, because the more you do it, the more you want it, but the less you're satisfied.
That's right.
Like life, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And people are looking for things and not being nourished, just like you said. And I tell people one of the things when it comes to food is that your body's looking for calories and it's looking for nutrition. It needs the vitamins and minerals, but it needs the amount of calories, because we burn off a certain amount of calories on a day, just whether you're just sitting or whether you're working and doing things. And I tell people, if they're going to go at, let's say, a typical kind of British meal would be, let's say, some fish and chips. So you can go and get some fish and chips, tastes great, and maybe that's 2,000 or 3,000 calories there and then. So you eat that, and your body is really kind of, the hunger's gone for a little bit because it's received 2,000 calories.
Yeah.
But an hour later, you're hungry again. And the reason being is because the body didn't receive the nutrition. It didn't receive the vitamins, the minerals, and the things it actually requires. So you go and eat again. And if you're clever, you'll have some fruit or some vegetables, and then your body gets the vitamins and minerals it's looking for. So eating the calories isn't enough. Whereas if you go, let's say you have a vegetarian meal, or you go to those very expensive restaurants where they give you really good quality food but very small, you can be very full very quickly, especially if you have a really good quality vegan or vegetarian food, and you're full, and you receive the calories and you've received the nutrition, so you're fuller for longer. Your body has received all that it needs.
Very true.
So yeah, I think in the modern day, what's happening is people are kind of, they're searching, but what we're filling up on is calories, not necessarily the nutritive kind of substances that we require and that we're craving for. So people go out and look for something again, and then they fill up on the fish and chips again.
I mean, we have to say, we're not knocking fish and chips.
No,
because there's a time and a place by the seaside.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no problem. I eat fish and chips, and I think I had some about a month ago myself, so about once or twice
I haven't had any for ages.
Yeah.
I have to say, I think since last year, and I keep thinking, I've got to have it, but I'm very particular, and I think, I've got to try it. I've got to go and find somewhere. And then in the end, I think, oh, no, I can't now.
Yeah.
Maybe it's laziness. I don't know. But, there's something about it that's sort of comforting. I think the idea is better than the actual experience, isn't it?
Yeah. I always eat it and then about 2 minutes later regret it. Think,
yes.
God, I'm full, but I don't feel particularly good, and I wish I just had. I should have gone to the shops and just bought something to cook at home instead. Yeah. But so yeah,
absolutely
it's just
the truth, and that's an interesting thing, because food. I want to ask you about this actually. People's relationship with food, and especially now, everywhere you look, Mir, whether it be on social media or wherever, people are obsessed with food.
Yes, yeah.
What is going on there? Yeah. Because people are so hungry for something, and they make these. I have a friend, and she makes beautiful cakes, but she doesn't eat them. And I say to her, I don't understand. Why don't you eat the cakes? And she said, oh no, I can't eat the cakes. I said, well, what's the point then? She said, I'll give it to friends and family. I said, well, why not? She said, I'm really scared of getting fat.
Yes.
And this is one line that really irritates me, because I think life, as I said, is such a small fragment in time that this whole food relationship, it's really skew with at the moment. What is that?
Yes. Our relationship to food is very complex. I mean, it can be very simple for some people, because certain personality types and certain types of people just see it as fuel. They almost dislike eating food. They don't have, let's say, issues with food. They're not particularly excited by it. So they'll eat whatever's given to them. They see it as fuel, and then that's it. And some, more often than not, they probably don't eat enough calories throughout the day, and then they exist. And then they're much more concerned about other things in life, and just having lunch or stopping for dinner is a bit of an interruption on their day. But they don't have let's say a pathological issue with food. Often food issues often start for all kinds of reasons, but start when we're young. I was listening to something on the radio that I tell people all the time. It was perhaps about a year ago now, and there was a psychologist talking about how food issues start with a lot of people, and it may be that you ask your child to eat something green, because we all know vegetables. Good vegetables are good. So you're like, sweetie, have your broccoli, please, and then for some reason she says no. And then you kind of get upset. It all escalates, and before you know it, you're saying, "Listen, if you don't eat your broccoli, you're not going to go outside and play with your friends, or you're not going to have an ice cream," or you tell them off. So they force this kind of broccoli down, and they build this negative association to it immediately. So what they can go from is in 10 minutes, the psychologist said that in 10 minutes, what they can do is convince themselves that, I don't like broccoli, to, I don't like greens, to mummy and daddy were upset with me, mummy don't love me, I don't love greens, I can't eat anything green, I'm allergic to green food. Boom. Now they've got a health issue related to eating vegetables that they carry on for the rest of their lives. And the psychologist says that happens so quick with so many people that's one of the things that she sees all the time. And then she approaches people and says, so were you actually tested to see if you were allergic to the green vegetables? And they say no. And then they go through medical tests and they find that actually they're not. And then they backtrack where this has all come from. And it's usually some type of negative association that we've made in our younger lives. So, if we kind of say we don't like things, it often comes from there. Some people don't like textures. Often, and again, related to the example I gave you, it's often about control. That's the big issue for an awful lot of people, because it's something that we have every single day, that we have a small or perhaps a large amount of control over in our day-to-day existence. You can decide, actually, I'm not going to eat breakfast today, or I'm going to skip lunch, or actually, I'm not going to have that for lunch, I'm going to have this instead, and I had a big lunch, I'm not going to have a dinner. So we're making these conscious decisions on what we eat on a daily basis, very regularly, and it's one of the places us as human beings can exert conscious control. And in a life where often people don't have control over their environment, their surroundings, their well-being, the people around them, it's the one thing that they find that they can control.
Yes.
So for a lot of people, that's it. There are, of course, other issues, but it's quite complex, that is, and that's why people should really speak to professionals in that area. But whether it's for religious reasons, which for just recently Ramadan's just finished, so Muslims have been fasting for a month, and often they consciously decide not to eat during sunlight hours. Christians a little while ago had 40 days of Lent, and so they would decide not to eat fish or not to eat chocolate. And if anyone who's from India or is of Hindu descent, they don't eat meat on. They usually choose a day, one day a week, when they won't eat any meat at all. And some people just fast and pray all day as well. So yeah, it's an area we often have control over, whether we decide to eat something, not eat something, put salt in it, not salt in it, add chili, have vegetables, not.
Yeah.
And so it's often tied in with control and with things from our past that may or may not be relevant to the actual food itself. So,
and it's a deep subject, isn't it?
It is. It is,
and
a deep subject. It's a huge subject and really requires lots of aspects of kind of further inquiry and specialists with deep knowledge of it to be able to talk it through properly. But that's often what I see myself in clinic, as people may or may not have issues going on in their lives, but one place that they can control is food, and they often do, and it often shows up as perhaps a mild, I don't know if you can get mild eating disorders, but perhaps not quite severe anorexia, but where they will decide, actually, no, I'm only having this amount of calories, or I don't need that, or they'll only eat. Sometimes you see people, they'll order a plate full of food, but will eat less than half of it all the time, and at home, same thing.
I see that a lot. I've seen that a lot, and where they will push it around the plate as if they're eating it, but when you actually look at it, they haven't eaten it. And one of the things,
right.
One of the things about it all, which I find fascinating, is that if you really want to know someone, they say there's an old saying that my grandfather used to say, eat a bag of salt with them. And it's absolutely true, or share a meal with them, because you can tell a lot about people when you eat with them, whether they share their bread or, how they interact with you. I think it shows you really the characteristics of who that person is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really old thinking. I think an awful lot of people take it for granted. But it's a very, very good way of kind of assessing people, isn't it? People use it in the modern day, don't they, when they have business meetings and will invite people out to dinner, whether it's to try and coerce them into business or to get them to know better, or if you're, I don't know, if your son or daughter have brought home a new boyfriend or girlfriend, and you think, oh, let's go out to eat. And then, of course, the child doesn't know, but the child just thinks, oh, mummy and daddy are just taking me out for something to eat, wherever you go, McDonald's or a really nice restaurant. But really what you're doing is kind of assessing the new partner to say, oh, actually, they've got good manners. Oh, they clean their shoes on the way.
Absolutely.
They pull the chair in for my daughter. And, there's all these things that are going on. And, they even, offered to pay, but no, I must pay. And then, they let her in through the door first. They said, excuse me, I need to go to the toilet. And, all these things, it's all a big assessment. It's very revealing. And lots of cultures have lots of, every culture has their own kind of ceremony, don't they, around food and how things should and shouldn't be done.
And tea drinking, for example.
Oh, yes.
That's such an important thing. Even here in England, everything, the world's problems can be resolved with a cup of tea.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Oh, tea's a fascinating subject. I love tea. I wish I was an expert enough to talk about it, but it's just... that's a huge.
Do you blend teas? I'm a bit of a tea blender, I have to say.
Oh, really? Yeah.
There's a fine art to it, isn't there?
There is. I like my Chinese teas. My main Chinese teacher got me into oolong tea. So prior to that, I did like Chinese tea, and I would often drink kind of normal green teas and pu'er teas.
Oolong is nice. It's very light, I find.
Yeah. You can get really light ones, and you get really nice, darkly roasted, heavy ones as well.
Oh, can you? I've tried only the very light one, where it's a very light sort of ambery cut.
Yes.
Colour.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You can get a huge range, and
I didn't know that.
Oolongs are a huge subject because the grade of the oolong tea, it depends on the height of the tea bush. Every 100 meters you go up the mountain, it has a different quality, and of course, the time of year it has a different quality, and then how long you roast it for and oxidize it for gives it a different quality. So you've got these huge amounts of variables, and if you deeply roast it, you get less caffeine in it, but you get a deep roasted taste. And each region is really supposed to get it from one or two regions, but it tastes different each one. So it's fascinating, and how you prepare it, how you drink it. Basically, there are three big variables that I tell people when they want to drink kind of good quality Chinese teas. Anyway, one is the temperature of the water is really important. The quality of the water is really, really important. Is it spring water? Is it mineral water, tap water? And the vessel that you drink it in as well.
Yes.
Yeah, because of course you can get taste from the cup, and how long, and of course how long you brew it for. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. And each brew with an oolong tea or pu'er tea tastes slightly different as well. So you're supposed to leave the water in it for an extra 5 or 10 seconds every time.
This is interesting. I'm going to look at that now with oolong tea.
It's a lovely thing. Is Chinese tea, and tea ceremonies in China kind of are amazing. Japan has tea ceremonies which go on for hours.
Yes, I've read about that.
Beautiful. Yeah, they're wonderful. And again, there are protocols with all of things, and especially with, I think, the Chinese still have protocols and things still mean things, but they are way more relaxed about things than the Japanese. Whereas with Japanese cultures, everything means something. The way your shoes face, don't face, where you place them, how you place them. Everything means something in Japanese culture. And Chinese culture had that, but definitely doesn't have that to the extent that the Japanese still continue with. Tea ceremonies are very important. And whether it's you're going through a 3-hour Japanese tea ceremony or making a cup of tea with for someone who's sat in your kitchen, it's all very important, and it is ceremonial.
It is, and it's beautiful. And it's a shame that some of these things are lost, because a great shame, because there's so much beauty in it. I know I spent a lot of time in the Middle East and in Turkey, and I remember that one of the best things was to be greeted buy tea in a glass, with either mint in it or black tea.
Yeah.
It was, and I don't even drink sweet tea. I drink very strong tea when it comes to black tea, but I could even drink sweet tea there because, as you said, it's the way it's presented, in what it actually is in, who's serving it, even. But it creates a beautiful atmosphere for that moment, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It's very important, and I think what that speaks to is how we as human beings obviously enjoy ceremony. I'm fascinated by it, but how social we are. As we're quite social beings, and to share something that's quite quite special with other people is important. And it shows that we like being with other people. By and large, we like sharing our space with other people. We like sharing what we have with other people. And it's how you show your love, generosity, and kindness to people. To welcome someone in, especially in this kind of Islamic countries, is important. They always treated travelers really well.
Yes.
People who travel, you welcome them into the house, you feed them, you house them, you water them, you give them tea, you make them welcome, and then they go on. So it's a part of people's cultures all over the world. So it's just it's always a welcoming thing, and I think to be able to share something as comforting and as simple as a cup of tea can show absolute kindness and generosity to people.
Yes, absolutely.
Who just need kindness and generosity in their life, and then a cup of tea can do that.
Absolutely. And I was saying to a friend of mine the other day, I said, what's the most beautiful things we were talking about? And she said to me, oh, well, I think it's for someone to make you a meal or to buy you something. I said, do you know what I think? It's someone to make you a cup of tea. Because it's that respect. I think the underlying factor in all of this is this respect that we have lost as mankind, I think. And you were talking about how in the Islamic countries, and even, in the Far East and everything, that when a guest comes, it's treated, so well, because a lot of the beliefs that you've probably heard of, Mir, is that a guest is sent from God. You never know who they are.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't know in any case who anyone is. And that's the important thing, I think, that most people have forgotten. And we need to try to remember that everyone we meet is, in fact, a mirror and is helping us in some way. But that respect seems to be diminishing very quickly.
Yes, it's a shame. I think you're right. The message is that, sometimes the people that appear in front of you are there for a reason, often. And they may be a reflection of what you need in yourself at that time of your life, or perhaps during that moment of that day. And they will reflect an issue that you need to look into further, or they will bring an answer that you need to hear, or take you along a little bit of a journey that you need to go on for that time, perhaps when we're drinking that cup of tea. So, the people that come into our lives and the time that they come into is important. And I think as to the respect, you're right. I think what's happened is there are so many of us on this planet, and we're all so busy and trying to earn a living and do things that have made us kind of not think about the tribe or the country as a whole, but we've been taught to think of ourselves as individuals, that you basically lose the connection to others, and you show a lack of respect for not only yourself, but to often our friends, our family, to the people around us in our communities. Which is why I think, slowing down, taking time to drink a cup of tea, taking time to see your friends, your family, and be respectful to the people on the other side of the road when you say good morning. That's really important. I think even if we all have these super busy lives where we're working 16-hour days, and what we do is important or very stressful, we all have time during that is just to breathe in through the nose, breathe out through the mouth, release some of that tension, and maybe give someone a smile, maybe give someone a nod, and say
Yes.
hello. When I was walking my daughter to school this morning, we were walking at school, and there was a man delivering leaflets. Never seen him before. We've never seen each other before, but we looked each other in the eye for a moment, smiled, and nodded at each other, and then that was it. He went about delivering his leaflets, and I carried on walking my daughter to school. So there's always time, and I think whether it's a wave across the street or just to say hello, it's important. Respect for ourselves, for our elders, and for our families and community, and for the world at large is important.
Very, very true. Because you don't know what a smile, it may change someone's whole day. Especially in these times where people are so isolated, and so, I don't know, they're not really, I suppose, even allowing themselves to allow that generosity of spirit to shine through.
Yes, he's right. We're so wrapped up in our own issues because life is either so busy, you don't have time to do anything, or it's so stressful and you're dealing with the pain and discomfort in your own life. You don't have the ability to kind of come out of that pain and discomfort to see what's happening around you. You're wrapped up in your own problems, and people are. You see people all the time, walking down the street, and they're looking down at the ground. They're not looking in front of them. They're not looking comfortable and relaxed. They're looking down at the ground. And, that speaks to what's going on in their own heads. Maybe they're thinking too much. Maybe they're depressed or low, or they have particular worries, which are keeping their eyes down. Excuse me. And, it's just, hopefully things will change, because I think, we can all make that change. We all have to start with ourselves and our families. And, life probably is only going to get busier and more stressful, for most people. When technology started, we were told that all these devices we were given were going to save us lots of time, and we would have time to go and do the things we really wanted. So it didn't matter if it was a new washing machine. Suddenly you won't have to wash your clothes by hand anymore. You can put them in and go and do something else. Or whether it was a dishwasher, or it was a microwave, or computers and mobile telephones, these emails, they were all supposed to save us time so that we could go and do other things, but they've just taken more of it.
It's very true. They've overtaken.
The mobile phone, especially the new smartphones, were supposed to we could save more time, because what you can do is you can do your emails, you can send your text messages, you can take your photos, all on this one device, and basically it will save you time and effort from having to do it in lots of other places. But what's happened? We all spend all of our time looking at the phone. People are sat there eating dinner together, not even talking to each other. They're looking at their own phones, and
that's so annoying. No one in my household is allowed to do that. And I won't even, in the good old days of when we used to socialize, I had one friend in particular, and she would actually be in a meal. We were in a beautiful restaurant, and she would be on the phone. And I found that very disrespectful.
Yes, yeah.
And it comes back down to respect again, that if we respected each other more, the world would be a completely different place.
Yes, yeah. I think if we had way more respect, way more kindness, way more, being gentle with other people, I think it's all important, really, really important. I think one of the things that I've learned, and I think I mentioned before, is that, everyone has something that they're dealing with. You can be the richest person in the world or the poorest person in the world. There's usually an issue, whether you're concerned about your children, your grandchildren, you're concerned about your health, you're concerned about your money, you're concerned about your business. We've all got a little something that we're concerned about in ourselves. So if you've got that, the person next to you has got it, the person you don't like has got it, so if we could all be kinder to ourselves and kinder to other people, it can go a long way. Like you said, you just don't know what that smile to someone could actually mean. It could mean so much to them. And during this time of the pandemic, when people weren't allowed to leave their houses, there were people for weeks on end or months didn't see anyone else at all. Food was delivered to the house. They were too scared to go to the shops. They wouldn't go anywhere. And people hadn't left their houses, especially older people, hadn't left their houses for months or even a year or two. I've heard a year or so. I've heard with some people because their children or grandchildren would drop something off. And we need to be kind to these people, and they need to be kind to themselves, and we need to be kind to each other. It will go a long way because we all have our own fears and tensions that we're dealing with. So, if we can not add to anybody else's, I see that as a good thing.
Absolutely. And we need not to be afraid of showing our true feelings and doing all that we can do to be there for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really important being true to ourselves, and is a big part of kind of not living in a world of illusion. If you can be true to yourself and know that you lack something, or you have too much something, or you're doing something that you shouldn't, then at least that acknowledgement is one step closer to resolving or changing that thing that might be affecting you in your life and other people's lives as well. I think unfortunately, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but definitely here in the UK, we've seen a lack of concern of other people. I remember when we were little, and perhaps you'd stand on let's say a public seat or something like that, one of those chairs that's outside on the pavement or out in the park. And of course, one of the things my mum would do is first there'd be a look and a smack on the back of my legs immediately, and she'd tell me off. And one of the things she'd say, other people have to sit on that. What do you think you're doing? You're going to get dirt on the seat. Get off that straight away. Yeah. And then I'd jump off, say sorry, maybe even cry, but then she'd clean that chair, that seat, and it was a public seat. Make sure it was all clean, and then if there was any rubbish, I'd have to pick it up and put it away because it was concern for other people. Now, there's not happening. People kind of let their children do things, make things dirty, and walk away without cleaning at all because they're. It's somebody else's problem. It's not their problem, and they're not concerned about others. They're not being kind to others. They're not being compassionate about others. It's unfortunate, and I guess that all goes back to people having less respect or having less concern for others, and perhaps being too busy with everything else going on in the world. People have less time for other people, but. One of the things I've seen during this pandemic is there are definitely groups of people who are being kinder, who are being nicer, because they've felt what this has done to them and to others, and they've that kindness has come out with an awful lot of people. So that's been really nice to see. Actually, it's been really good.
There are beautiful people, and we are beautiful people, but I think sometimes we forget, and that's one of the main things, is that when we forget that we are really a miracle here on earth in these times, because these times here now, although they can be very traumatic, there is this huge potential and this huge portal that's available for us to actually gain infinite wisdom and raise ourselves as human beings in every single way. And I want to ask you, Mir, now you are a Chinese medicine expert, aren't you?
Yes, I practice, yep. I've been for over 20 years, yeah.
Okay, now all these things that you speak about, it's such a high wisdom. Tell us a little bit how you decided to get into it and what it's done to your life. Because I know many people out there have asked me for you to tell us more about Chinese medicine, because there's so much in that can help each of us right now, especially when things out there seem not to be working, we can return back to the basics. So tell us a little bit why you decided to get into it and what it's done for your life.
Okay. Well, why? I guess Chinese medicine has always been around. I'm of mixed race. My father was born in India, what was called Bombay. It's called Mumbai now, I think. And then because he was a Muslim, his family were Muslim, when India was separated, or separated into Pakistan and India, but it was changed into two countries. His family moved to Karachi because they were Muslim. And so that's where he came from. And my mother, she's Filipino. And in the Philippines, kind of, it's an amalgamation of all kinds of different people. When you look at the genealogy of people, they've come from Taiwan, but then from Malaysia and some China. So it's a real mix. So your average Filipino, you can't say what they look like, but they're often a mix. They look very different. So, and in Filipino culture, there's an awful lot of kind of Chinese influence and Buddhist influence, even though the country itself is a Christian country, largely Catholic. So my mother, she brought that influence over with her. So she was a midwife, and when she came to the UK, but whenever we got treated with things, if we ever had to see a doctor, then we'd see a doctor, be given antibiotics or whatever it was. But if there was something else that she thought she could treat, she would use a Filipino kind of remedy. And it was always a bit odd. And, kind of look at my mom thinking, really? Do we have to do that? Does that really work? And, kind of, shouldn't we just get some normal medicine? And she'd be like, no, just drink this. It'll be fine. And then you'd get better. And you'd be like, oh, okay. I thought this crazy Filipino stuff was a bit crazy, but actually it works really, really well.
Yeah.
And it happened time and time again, kind of growing up. And so this influence of kind of having herbs, drinking certain things, pressing certain things and doing things, rubbing this oil, using massage, it was just what I grew up with. And Mum would see herbalists and healers, and she would see acupuncturists as well. So it was always there. And then when I was a teenager, of course, I was studying the martial arts. And then after about 10 years of that, I wanted more answers. And what happened is that I saw an advert in a magazine for an acupuncture course, and I was studying martial arts. I was in a really good job in London. I was in a corporate job earning way too much money for a 22-year-old. But I wasn't happy with that. On paper, it looked great. I had a big expenses claim, company car, flying around the country, doing the whole kind of corporate, which sounded great, but really it's not what I wanted. And I saw this advert and I thought, yeah, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I applied to the college, had an interview, I think within a week, and then got the acceptance letter that I was accepted onto the course. And then, a day or two after that, I accepted, said I was going to join, and kind of started demoting myself in this corporate job I was in, so that I could do the work. So the Chinese medicine came after a life of basically having familiarity with herbs and acupuncture and spirituality that was brought over by both my mother and my father from their different places. So spirituality and herbal medicine were always there, as were martial arts from my mum's side of the family. And then through the martial arts that I'd been studying, there was a familiarity with it there too, because we'd heard of our master doing all kinds of amazing things, healing people, using energy, using herbs, using acupuncture himself, and getting some amazing results. So, and that was, for me, that was really inspirational, because you could hear of him kind of doing things and you thought, whoa, that's amazing what he set. He was able to set people's bones and put herbs over the herbs, over their broken bones, and the bones were better within a few weeks, and people were back to doing sports, or people who'd got run over by big vehicles, and people thought, oh, these people are going to die. He would look after them. He would basically use herbs, he'd use acupuncture, he'd use body work and massage to get them well, and they were fit and strong. We just heard these stories time and time again. So it's really inspirational. So when I saw the advert and I applied, that was it. I just thought, to be honest, that I was just going to practice it just to get my martial arts better. But by the end of it,
How long was the course?
It was a 3-year course. Got turned into a degree, so 3-year degree course. I was studying it before it became a degree, so I don't have the whole degree status thing. And it's it was very good for just the acupuncture, and I studied the herbs separately. And then I came out of that with the third year. I became the guy who specialised in gynecology and obstetrics and women's health. I think what happened is I saw 1 or 2 women in my clinical year purely by chance for their women's health issues, and then I got them, I think, quite a lot better. And then people said, people started to say, well, go and see him, he's really good with women's health. And then from there, suddenly I became, the guy that everyone came to for that kind of thing, which was basically like my first 10 years of my career was all I did was really women's health. And then so I specialised in gynecology and obstetrics for a long time, and then the last 10 or so years has been much more varied. So there's that. But for me, in terms of what I gained from Chinese medicine is, I think, I've gained an awful lot. Obviously, it's given me a career and something interesting to do, very interesting feed. But what it's done is given me an insight into a chapter of world history that was absolutely fascinating. It happened to be in China, and there are many other chapters around the world of history which are absolutely fascinating, probably even more so. But you've got a snapshot into a place in the world that had amazing technology, that was way ahead of its time, and that was at its absolute pinnacle of brilliance. And every part of the world has that time. You can go back to the times when people in Ethiopia were the top scholars of the world, or you can go back to times where basically the authorities in the world were basically people in Egypt. And then a little bit later, because all the people from Greece went to study in Egypt, didn't they? And the people in Egypt, they studied in Ethiopia. So everyone comes back from somewhere else. So in the West, we always talk about how great the Greeks were. Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, all these people. So we can all go back to these times of brilliance. And for me, Chinese medicine had its absolute time of brilliance about 2,400 years ago. Perhaps even before then, to be honest. That was absolutely brilliant, and so much of it was brilliant. It was the pinnacle of study of Chinese medicine, of human anatomy, of astrology, of energy, of meditation, of martial arts, excuse me, of energy work, body work. It was just an absolute golden period of history of that time. So for me, I find that quite fascinating, and for me, I thought it was going to give me just something interesting to look at in terms of medicine, but it's given me philosophy, it's given me psychology, it's given me astrology, cosmology. It's all there. They had it all there. So that's basically what I look to, and that's where I get a lot of inspiration from.
Because it's something that even people talk about, even our grandparents and great-grandparents. If you want to find any knowledge, they used to say, then travel to China. Because it's there really. There's other places, as you say, different civilizations and so many different secrets in different parts of the world with health and well-being. And as you said, astrology, astronomy. But China seemed to have this, in some ways, edge on a lot of things, and it seems to have carried it through here into this century. And a lot of people asked me about this and wanted you to talk about it, Chinese medicine, because of all the things that are going on at the moment. I think there is still that respect, that there are still people within that practice, within the arts of that country, that have a very deep knowledge and wisdom about treating people, helping people, healing people. So that's what I'd really like to talk to you about, Mir, is these hidden masters, in a way, that you've either read about or that you are able to speak about, and also your experience with Chinese medicine in helping people, because I think it's something that really has a lot of weight in gold, as they say, to help people now.
Yes, absolutely. The Chinese medicine could definitely help people now. Things have changed an awful lot, but the way Chinese medicine or medicine in China was organized was absolutely brilliant for perhaps, I'm going to say, thousands of years. And it stems back thousands of years in the way that was organized for all the way up until around about 1911. Excuse me, well, when things changed, because basically people decided to modernize and leave the old ways behind. So for the last 100 years, Chinese medicine has changed, and even more so since the mid 70s. But before that, I'll have to kind of give you a bit of a history of Chinese medicine. But basically, awful lot of people say that Chinese medicine started with what's called the Yellow Emperor's Classic, which is dated back to about 2,400 years old. And it's basically a collection of essays, or what was actually bamboo scrolls that were written on, that had been written down 2,400 years ago. So what happened is there were, let me see. So the Chinese history has a number of kind of dates that go with it, and you had a number of emperors who ruled parts of the land, and you had a number of kings that ruled parts of the land. So China itself, the landmass, is bigger than the size of Europe, so it's absolutely huge. So what you would have is someone that rules something, let's say the size of Italy, and then some other king would rule something the size of France.
Okay, yeah.
So you had 5 or 6 or more places that they said, oh no, we belong to this emperor, we belong to this king, or whatever. And so for hundreds of years, it was always fighting each other. You know, each king would fight someone else, and then one king would want to take over someone else's land, so they'd join forces with the others to take over the land, and then they'd start fighting. So it was just continual battle and kind of mayhem for ages, and war. And then one person said, actually, what we need to do is unite. We need to unite as one big country. And of course, they faced resistance, and people said, no, I don't think so. That means I have to give up what I have so that we become part of you. I want to keep what I have. And so there was these continual wars. And then the one person who said that they want to keep it all was called the emperor. I think that time it was Emperor Qin. And he said, no, we should be one. And basically he went around all these different kingdoms and beat them all, but then said, okay, now that I've beaten you all, we are now part of one. We are part of China. Or what was called Pudonghua. Pudong is basically, that's the name of China. That means the central kingdom, the central country. They see themselves at the center of the universe, or the center of the world.
Yeah.
And that was basically how he united China. And so you had this emperor who was based in the north of China, outside of Beijing. That became the capital, and everyone would pay homage to the one emperor. And then what happened is, then, as history had been before, is that people would try and take over their emperors all the time. And then every few hundred years, there'd be one line of emperors with one family, and then someone else would take over. They would come, fight, take over that, and now there's a whole new emperor. But what they did every time there was a new emperor, or empress, because they're empresses as well, excuse me, is that they would get rid of everyone that had anything to do with that previous emperor. So they would get rid of obviously all their scholars. They would get rid of anyone that was on their side. They would get rid of their history, and they would basically burn things down. They would burn down the scholars. They would the scholars' libraries. They would kill the scholars. They would exile people, all their politicians, and then history, as far as they were concerned, started with the new emperor or empress, and then that's where things happened. So you had this continual taking over every few hundred years. But what happened around about 2,400 years ago is there was an absolute pinnacle of Chinese thought where what they did is they got the best people to write down things. This is when before printing presses, so they would carve things into tortoiseshell, into bone, and eventually into bamboo. Before, when they kind of started to do writing, and in the early days, people had written these things on medicine and then had given the best stuff to the emperor. The emperor basically, kept a really nice library, and then the scrolls would go there. What happened is one emperor was basically overtaken, and the new emperor said, "Okay, what we're going to do is not burn the library down. We're going to close it." So what they did is they closed the library, sealed it, and it remained sealed for about, I think, between 100 and 200 years. And then what happened is that they opened it 100 to 200 years later and found a lot of these medical scrolls and all these historical things, which people basically kept from there on. So they didn't get rid of them. They'd kept them. But what these scrolls that 200 years previously, which is about 2,400 years ago from now, had written, it was the absolute height of Chinese medical thought. And the scrolls are called the Yellow Emperor's Classic, and it's written as a conversation. So the Yellow Emperor would ask questions of someone called Chibo, which was to say, Chibo was a medicine scholar, and the Yellow Emperor would say, "So Chibo, why is it that people no longer live to 120 years old anymore, whereas they did in previous times?" And Chibo would say, "Well, what it is, your Excellency, is that people previously would live to 120 years old because they would abstain from too much sex. They would abstain from eating too much. They would go to sleep early. They would do exercise. They would work hard and not, do things that depleted them." So it was a book of questions and answers. It was a brilliant book of questions and answers. And
what's it called again, Mir?
It's called the Yellow Emperor's Classic.
And is it available?
Yeah, you can get it. Yeah, you can get all kinds of translations. It was called the Huangdi Neiging. Yeah, that's the Mandarin name for it, or the Yellow Emperor's Classic. Now, it's been translated into English by a few people, but often what people have done is just taken little bits of it and translated just that little bit. And so they've translated one part of it or another part of it, and a few people have translated the whole thing. But there's a big problem with translations because you can just look at it and translate it. There's a brilliant translation by someone called Paul Onschold, who's a German translator, and he's just interested in Chinese medicine. Even though he's not a practitioner himself, he just likes translating their texts. And there are other translations, but the problem is, in order to understand it, you need to be someone who understands Chinese medicine and Chinese philosophy at the same time. And that's quite a difficult pursuit. It's kind of the equivalent of having 2 or 3 PhDs, and only people with 2 or 3 PhDs in this very specialist area can understand the book or translate it in the first place. So it's very, very complex. So some of the deeper things, they would go into all kinds of deeper things and talk about the relationship between the stars, the moons, the planets, and health here on Earth. And what Chibo would do is explain how basically the energy transformed.
Oh, this is amazing. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah,
I know it's a huge subject.
Huge subject, but basically it's an awful lot of numerology. It's quite a deep, dense subject. But basically what they would talk about is basically the answer that came from Chibo is just that things, it would change from the conformations of 6 to a number 5 to a number 4 to a number 3, number 2 to the 1. And to people that just sounds like a lot of kind of philosophical or craziness. But what he's talking about is how the energies of what are called the 6 divisions of the planets, and that's basically how planets and stars expend energy outside of themselves, what we would call cosmological energy, how that basically comes out and is in space outside of the Earth. But when it hits the atmosphere, the energy would change into what they would call the conformations of the five, or the five elements, and how that appears on Earth, which is basically wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And so basically the energy exploded and changed and amalgamated into what we see here on Earth. And then that would change into the four divisions here in the human being, basically yin within yang, yang within yang, yang within yin, yin within yin, which is basically the yin-yang symbol, how things manifested in humans. And again, it's all about how energy transforms from one state to another state, and how it manifests on different dimensions for different beings, and how we all relate to it. So they were given those kind of answers 2,400 years ago and written down.
My goodness.
And it was all explained very clearly, how it worked, and they'd already obviously had mapped this all out, probably over the course of thousands of years previous to that, through cosmology and astrology, and it had to be done through generations and generations of observing the stars, about the solstices, about the equinoxes, the movement of the planets, the 12-year cycles of Jupiter, and that was all kind of mapped and kind of talked about in this book, and how it affects our health and well-being, and how if you basically treat somebody, that you have to take all of those into consideration at those different levels in order to treat somebody well. And that a higher practitioner could do that, and they would get 9 out of 10 people better, because they were able to see how things changed throughout the universe, how 6 changed to 5 to 4 into the human realm. That a medium practitioner would probably get something like 7 or 8 people out of 10 better, because they could see it, but they couldn't understand it all. Whereas a low-level practitioner would get 6 out of 10 people better. They could see it, they couldn't really understand it, but they did what they could. And the problem is, if you speak to people who really know what they're talking about, and who are really close to being medium or high-level practitioners, is that unfortunately most people today aren't even low-level practitioners. So there's this whole effort to try and get people up to 6, up to getting 6 out of 10 people better. So basically they wrote this amazing kind of set of scrolls detailing all the answers to Chinese medicine, and how to get people better in relationship to the environment and the world and the universe around them. Then these scrolls got locked up for 200 years, and then they found them again. But what had happened before they got locked up is that there were an awful lot of answers to these questions that were anatomical, and it was basically a really, really good book on medicine and anatomy, as well as cosmology, astrology, and lots of other things. So people wanted to know where the meridians came from in Chinese medicine.
Explain that, Mir.
Sure.
To people out there.
So when you look at Chinese medicine or an acupuncture model, you will often see these lines that traverse the body, and they're named after different organs in the body. So you'll see the heart meridian, or the pericardium meridian, the lung meridian, the spleen meridian, the bladder meridian, and so on. There are 12 of them. And there are some extra meridians as well. And basically what we're taught now is that they are lines of energy that traverse the body. And if the energy around the body is stuck in any one way, or there's a blockage in any one way, or damage in any one way, then there can be illness in that one part of the body or the whole part of the body. So modern thought is that basically if you unblock these lines of energy that are diverted or damaged, then basically if you unblock it, then the body's healthy again. And that's basically been, let's say, the most popular narrative. It's not the only one, but it's been the most popular narrative since the the library was open again. That's what happened. But if you look at it closely, real scholars will look at it, especially the ones. There was someone I know called Dr. Ed Neal, who was a doctor first, but then became a very enthusiastic about Chinese medicine and reading Chinese medicine. And he read it and he said, actually, this is a really, really good anatomy book. And he said, when they're describing what we now call meridians, the lines of energy, what they were actually describing were paths of nerves and blood vessels in a really accurate way, like deadly accurate. He said they were just as accurate as any medical book we have today. And in fact, in a lot of times, even more so. They were telling things that we've only just recently discovered. There's something called the omentum, which was only discovered about a year or two ago. But the Chinese were written about, and was written in this book about 2,400 years ago. So it's just, they were deadly accurate in an awful lot of things.
That's incredible, Mir.
Yeah.
Because, for example, explain this for me, please, because this I find fascinating. So, for example, the theme of the day, sinuses, hay fever, and things like that. So many people are suffering from it. So if let's focus on the sinuses, for example. Yes. That doesn't necessarily mean that the illness is coming from there, does it? It could be coming from somewhere completely different. This is what I find fascinating.
Yes. So if we look at meridian theory, because there are other theories too, but if we look at meridian theory, which some people call organ theory because it's named after organs, it's just that if you look at the nose and hay fever, because I treat that an awful lot at the moment. So classically, near the nostrils, on the side of each nostril, is the end of the large intestine channel, or some people call it the colon channel. Which, if you look at the large intestine channel, basically it starts kind of on the tip of the index finger and then travels up close to thumb, up your forearm, up the shoulder, past the throat, and kind of ends on the side of your nose. But the reason it's called the large intestine channel is because that meridian has a deep connection down through into your large intestine as well. So that's why it's called the large intestine channel. Or if you go back to the ancient theory, they would say, actually, there's a blood vessel that comes up, passes through the large intestine, travels up and ends up at the nose, but there's a branch that goes down the arm too. So it's all very real physical anatomy. But the meridian system, if people who believe just in the energetic system will say, no, there's a line of energy that goes up the arm into the nose. So what you can have is basically a disruption of something along that pathway. Or,
for example, what sort of disruption?
Let's say that it travels from the tip of the index finger up the forearm, up the shoulder, and up to the throat into the nose. Let's say you hurt your arm and your forearm, or you damage your hand or your shoulder, maybe because you've bumped into something. Then that might mean there's less energy or less blood or fluids going up that pathway. So by the time it gets to your nose, there's less energy, less fluid, less blood in general, which means that area is going to be more susceptible to illness or disease. And that goes for any other meridian around the body too, or pathway too. So if you have an illness on the inside, let's say you've got digestive problems and you've always had stomach problems, that can manifest as a discoloration or an issue along the stomach pathway on the outside of the body. Or if you get an injury on the outside of the body, that might affect your stomach on the inside too. So it can go both ways. It's
so interesting because I think we forget sometimes that whether it be sinuses or a headache or whatever it is, a digestive issue, I think we forget that unless we treat the body as a whole, you can't really. I think modern medicine has absolutely brilliant things about it, but I think the natural way, I totally believe this, I live my life by it, but the natural way is to try to strengthen those weak points and to build the body in a much more robust way.
Yes, Absolutely. And I think, Chinese medicine, absolutely excelled at that. But then, so did many other cultures around the world. And you would always fix the whole. And whether that was fixing the physical body or the energetic body or the emotional body, that was really important. So it might be that someone was really sad, and then they would manifest with asthma problems, or
I was going to
they're going to
ask you
breathe
that
problem.
actually, that a lot of sadness comes from the chest.
That's right. Yes, yeah, and you will see it often manifest as people who are hunched over an awful lot, people who walk with a hunch, and that basically the lungs close down. The lungs is kind of in Chinese medicine is partly responsible, or not responsible, but holds the emotion of sadness. So if you're sad, maybe there's been a bereavement in the family, or sad of an event in your life. In order to protect it or to encompass it, the body kind of goes over it. But then that going over it basically impedes its ability to work well, and you have this feedback loop that starts and continues. So people hunch over, but the hunching over creates more sadness, and then the sadness creates them to hunch more, and it goes backwards and forward, and that's how people can be kept in patterns for years, decades, of their whole lifetime. So the emotions are very much a big part of Chinese medicine, and are always considered. And like I said, that you have to look at the person as a whole, really. One of the great things about Western medicine, and it is absolutely brilliant, and current allopathic medicine, is that you can treat individual things really, really well. You can give someone steroids for the eczema that they have in their elbows, or patch something up. But what that will also do is not take into consideration that, oh, okay, yes, they've got eczema, but you've completely missed out on the fact that, hold on, maybe that's showing up in their skin because of something else that's going on inside their body. Maybe there's something that's not quite with their digestion, or maybe it's the sadness that they hold in their lungs that's basically not working. It's basically not making their digestion work well, and then because their digestion is not working well, the food's not being digested and is coming out as a reaction on the skin. So that's not taken into consideration in modern medicine. But in traditional medicines, it is, and very much so in Chinese medicine. So when someone says to me, "Oh, they've got a skin problem," or they're getting headaches, at the same time, I've got 5 other questions going on. It's just like, okay, they've got a headache. Where is it? What part of the head is it? Okay, that part of the head often relates to stress and tension, and that stress and tension comes from the liver. So what's affecting the liver is often anger or frustration. What's basically causing the frustration in their life? That's what's going through my head in that split second when someone says they've got a headache.
You scan them, in effect.
Yes, and you have to be able to see all those things and ask those leading questions, and then kind of find out what's going on with frustration. So it might be that all led back to the frustration in their life. Maybe, I don't know, they're frustrated that they can't, park their car, outside their house, so they're getting these headaches. And then basically, if you sort out the frustration that's going on in their life, then boom, you say, well, actually, why don't you just go and park? Why don't you, I don't know, make a drive on your house, and then you can always park your car there. And they're like, oh, I never thought of that.
That's good advice.
Boom, done. Suddenly the headaches disappear, they sleep better, they're not angry or frustrated with other people, they're nicer to other people. Boom, you found that one linchpin, that one really key thing. And that's what we're always trying to do with Chinese medicine, is find, preferably we're trying to find the one key thing that's in there that's causing the issue. But a lot of the time we find things along the pathway, and clear the pathway, so that the other things are better along the way.
And I know lots of people that use Chinese medicine. I mean, I can vouch for your expertise because, you're an absolutely fantastic therapist, Mir, I have to say. And one of the things that always is fascinating is that even a word said in the right context can change something within that person. Because when you're reading a person, I know that you've said many things to me, but it could be just a word and it clicks. And I suddenly think, oh, yes. So this art and expertise that you have in this art is really quite amazing, because when somebody comes to you, tell us a little bit, when someone comes to you as a patient, what can they expect?
So I don't know, because I've worked on my own for such a long time. I don't work with groups at the moment, though that might be changing in the future. But what they expect is they'll come with whatever label they have. So they'll say, "I've got a headache." Often people come in with neck and shoulder problems. That's very common, or lower back problems. So they'll come in with that, and then I go through very much a kind of a medical questionnaire, asking about the medications they're taking, how the pain started, where it come from, where they think it came from, what makes it better and worse, and what they would like from me to do, because I need to know what their goals are. For some people, they just want to be made comfortable. Other people, they want an absolute cure in 2 treatments. And then I'm very honest and say what I can and can't do. So from the outside, and if I have a student that's observing, though I tend not to do that anymore, but they would see that you go through the normal standard medical questionnaire, an assessment of the body or the physical part or the emotional issue, and I try and find out what's actually going on. So there's that, but at the same time, I'm also trying to find out what's really going on underneath. Where did it come from? How is it manifesting? What's the emotional, psychological, or spiritual reasons for it? Is it something that's basically karmic, that's come down through the family? Is it something that's basically part of the society? Is it something that they are using as a defense mechanism, or some sort of issue to mask something else? Is this really what they're here for? Or do they really want to talk to me about the fact that they are going through fertility issues, but really they've come with just saying that they've got a bad back? They want me to find out more. So I'm going through all kinds of things. So we go through that, and I think I'm quite I approach people in different ways. Or lots of the time I'm quite straightforward. If I think people can handle it, I'll be straightforward and say, is there anything else you want me to help with? How many children have you got? And then they'll say, we haven't got any children. We were thinking of perhaps starting that soon. And then that's what they were looking for. They were looking for me to get closer to that. Then I'll say, oh, really? How long have you guys been trying? And then I'll say, oh, actually, we have been trying for the last 3 years. And then, oh, okay, have you done this? Have you done that? So I can go into what they really came for.
Right.
Because often people will come with one thing, but they really want something else. Not all the time, but it does happen a lot. So, yeah, they come with that, and that's basically it. But what I see myself and the space I work in is basically is an opportunity for change. People come to me for change, and sometimes realistic, sometimes unrealistic, but they all want change and need change. So what I do is kind of I open up possibilities. That's how I see myself. I open up possibilities, and hopefully what they do is they go on their true path, and that they can continue to basically do what they're supposed to do, because we've created the space in which they can make those decisions to go forward on their path, and 2, we remove some of those obstacles for them to continue. I can't make people do anything, and I'm not supposed to make people do things. What I'm not supposed to do is take someone's back pain away and say, listen, now you can go and become the basketball player you always wanted to be. Maybe it's 30 years too late, but no, yes. I can't say to them, now you should go and do that. You should go and become the basketball player because you couldn't do it when you were 25. Now you should do it. That's not what I'm there to do. What I do is I take the pain away, so that now the realm of possibility comes up, and now they're able to do what they want to do, what they feel they should do, at this time in their lives. Maybe they want to go back and play basketball, but maybe they want to spend more time with their granddaughter playing on the ground, or maybe they want to, take up a new hobby, whatever. So I have to create a space for change, and then they must have the free will to make the change themselves. That's really, really important. And I do that under the radar. Of course, I don't tell people I'm doing that, or don't always tell people. But that's what I see my job is doing, is to create space for change. And then it's up to the person to have the free will to decide where they go with that.
It's a very big responsibility also for you, because you are, in a way, taking on their burden, which might be physical, psychological, or spiritual, or emotional. And as you said, creating that space. And so in a way, you're really, I suppose, the gatekeeper in some ways,
yes.
because you are giving them their key that only they can use for their door.
Yes,
you're not actually forcing them to do anything. It's their free will that they arrive literally in your life and at your doorstep, so to speak.
Yes.
But the next part of it is that you give them back the key to their life.
Yeah.
Only they can walk on that path from there on.
Yeah, well, see, maybe most people don't see that or don't understand that, but that's exactly the role that I take, and I've basically, that's the responsibility I take.
It's huge
for what I do. Yeah, but it's important, and it's important for the people who can make it. And not everyone sees, not all practitioners work in that way, and not, most practitioners don't see that. But if you work in a classical way, in a spiritual way, that's meant to basically free people up of their binds and their chains, then you let them go which way they want to go. It's just like if you're, you see all these wonderful things on the internet where people have freed an animal, whether it's a net, a fish is caught in a net, or whales caught in a net, or birds caught in a net, or something terrible. You don't then take it to the tree that you wanted to go and live in and say, well, I want you to stay here now so that I can look at you every single day, or bring that whale to your part of the world. You free it, and it's free. That is it. It makes its own choice after that. And that's exactly what I do with Chinese medicine. It's just that I free people, and then their ability to do what they choose to is entirely up to them, because it's not for me to say that what they do or don't do is what's right for them. There was a brilliant story one of my teachers was telling on a Zoom call, and I don't know the proper story. It's an old Chinese story, and I'm going to get this very, very wrong, but hopefully people will get the gist of it. And it's just that there was someone who basically had a child, and they had a bit of money, and they bought their child a horse. And all the people in the village said, "Oh, your child is so lucky. You have bought them a horse, a wonderful horse. How lucky they are." And then basically the child rode the horse, and then basically the child fell off and broke their leg. And then everyone said, "Oh, how unlucky this horse was. This horse brought much unluck and bad luck to the family and to the child. This is terrible." And obviously the child had a broken leg, but then basically there was a call up to war. There was a war going on, and basically all the soldiers were calling up children of that age and older to the war, but they saw the child had a broken leg and it would be of no use. And then basically people said, "Oh, how lucky is that child to have had a broken leg, and not to go to war. You were so lucky to have your child at home." And it goes back and forth. Who knows what luck is and isn't, and how it's presented to us, lucky to have a horse, unlucky to have a broken leg. Suddenly having a broken leg is really lucky again.
Absolutely.
It's all perspective. And I think it's all relative, exactly. And what I don't want to do is kind of like fix someone and say, "Okay, now you can go and play basketball because that's what you should have done 25 years ago." I can't do that. I don't know what is their luck and isn't. So what I do is free people as best as I can, and then they go to do what they do. And that's that's important that they have free will, because if you look at it karmically, I don't want to be karmically responsible for them. Like I said, I'm just a gatekeeper. I do what I can to unravel as much as I can and give them back their key, and they do with it as they want. That's how it's done in classical Chinese medicine, and that's the burden we hold as people who choose to practice in this way. That's what we always do. This is what we choose to do, and this is what we do forever, and this is what we work hard to do. I don't take it lightly, and it's what I do, and this is what a few of us do on purpose. I guess that's just the way it works, and whether we're lucky or unlucky, who knows?
Who knows? That's a tricky subject, Luck, as I believe destiny as well. And it's one of those things that I really have absolutely no clue on luck or on destiny, because it's so intricate, so deep and so wide and so deep, beyond what we could ever imagine. So I think we leave that to destiny, I always say, because the one who guides the stars and the moon and the planets and created us knows what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And all we can do is be, in effect, Mir, servants. And people take that connotation negatively, but it's not at all, because I think when you're serving people, I remember I was in Central Asia a few years ago, and we went in the middle of nowhere into a healer's place, and he was at a tomb, and he was, there was still leprosy there, and he was healing people. And we had a translator with us, and we said to him, what advice? And one of the things he said is always follow your heart. You don't need any advice. It knows the way, so long as you follow your heart. And the other thing I said to him was, but sometimes, I feel sad. And the sadness is something that overwhelms. And he said, quite simply, Mir, when you feel sad, put the sadness to the side and go and help someone. Go and do something for someone else in that moment, and it will gently disappear. And it has stood me good stead that whenever I feel sad, I'll go and do something for someone, whatever it may be. And it takes that focus away from it. And you're actually able to walk through that sadness. It's still there, but you can walk through it as opposed to get drowned in it.
Yes. Yeah,
and really what you do is really help people through it, whatever energy they're going through, whatever trials of life that they're going through. You are holding their hand for part of the way until they are strong enough and brave enough and healed enough to get on with their lives, the rest of their lives.
Yes, that's it. That's all I do. There's nothing else. And this, if it's a great privilege to be a part of people's journey for the short amount of time that I see them. Mm-hmm. For some people it's longer, for some people it's shorter, but it's an absolute privilege to be part of it. And it's if we can do that, then it's been a success. As that's how I measure things. Is if I can free people up to be themselves or be on their path as much as possible, then I've done well. But also realize I can't do that for all people, and will often tell people that they need to go and see somebody else or do something else, because that's part of the responsibility, is that if you're not the person that can free them, then you need to send them on to someone else who can. That's really, really important.
That's difficult, Mir, to find somebody. What advice would you give for people in their part of the world, wherever they are now, listening to this? What are the signs of a good healer, therapist? Because there's so many people that claim, as you well know, and I well know, that can do things, and people get disappointed. What are the sort of, I don't know, the 7 sort of golden rules to finding someone to help you, especially in Chinese medicine?
So there are different ways to find people who are good. If we talk about Chinese medicine to begin with, then we can relate it to perhaps other people who don't have Chinese medicine near them. But I guess one of the modern standards is that people seek someone out who's gone to a good university or got a good degree or a good PhD. That's fine, but we all know people with PhDs who aren't the cleverest people in the world. They're not smart. They might be academically good, but they can't do other things. So that piece of paper can be helpful, but it's not everything. In Chinese medicine, if you look at where they studied, who they studied with, and the lineages they come from, that can be really helpful, because often they will be with someone who's really famous and regarded as really good, and that's a very good starting point, because they might, because you're with someone really good, you can become really good as well. That's why you try and always train with the best people possible, but that's not a guarantee. There are many people who train with famous people who aren't very good, so who aren't very good themselves. So what you do is look at the quality of the people around them. Maybe they've got students, and you kind of assess their students and you see how good their students are. You look at the patients that they're treating and how well they're getting and how well they're talking. If they're talking in very real terms, saying, listen, I came here first, and when I first came here, I couldn't really walk properly. My foot was disfigured. I couldn't really, I couldn't go and fetch the water. I couldn't go upstairs. But now, with their help, I can walk better. I've started to climb upstairs, all okay. The people around me are much happier. And, they're talking this very nice, positive, very realistic way. Then that's a really good sign. If people perhaps start talking a bit too, they're a bit too kind of guru-like, and then too much in awe of the person, that's really important to kind of see, because it might be, oh my gosh, this person is absolutely brilliant. But you also have to take a step back and say, okay, is this all basically guru worship, or is this all, is this real? Are they just saying things that are basically they would aspire to, and which would actually be brilliant if it was in real life, but really they've all been here for 6 years and they still can't walk, they still can't go up the stairs, and they still, still not being a productive person, then you've got to think, I'm not too sure about this. So you have to look at the reality of the situation. So you look at the person, where they've studied, what they've studied, the people, their teachers. You look at their students, and you look at their patients, and so you're looking above them, you look into the side of them, and you're looking below them. And then you look at them in terms of their nature. I mean, there's an awful lot of people who just like being famous, and you take a step back and you think, oh, this person, they do help lots of people, and they're famous, and they've got really nice personality, and you think, actually, that's good enough. And if that's what you want, then that's great. But if you take a further step back, you think, actually, what they do is really good and is really helping this section of people. I want something different. I want something more than that. Then you have to go elsewhere. You have to look elsewhere and look, and perhaps study with someone else or listen to someone else, because that person might be brilliant, but maybe they can only take you so far. Just like I can only take people so far, and then I'll say, okay, now you need to go and see someone else, and then I send people off to others all the time. So, they need to be open, and they need honesty. And for me, a big part of it is integrity. My main teacher, Andrew Nugent-Head, who has a brilliant life story and is a brilliant practitioner, he has an awful lot of integrity. And I think I spoke to it before, that before the pandemic, he would travel to China and he would give 10 to 15% of his earnings to all his teachers' families. He'd travel to China, hand them the cash, and say, thank you. I couldn't do any of this if it wasn't for my teacher, your father who taught me this. So this is the money I give you, and he will continue to do that. So he has an awful lot of integrity. It's not something he speaks about, and it's something he mentioned to us once ever. And it's just, it's not something he shows off about. He doesn't, go onto Instagram and Facebook and tell people how brilliant he is and that he goes to China and gives. He doesn't do that. He very quietly just does things, and you kind of hear of the stories much later down the line, or you don't hear about them at all. So for me, I look for integrity and honesty. For me, that's my biggie. And
wherever that may be, Mir.
Wherever
for example,
that may be, yeah.
We have I have listeners that are so far and wide. I was looking only the other day, and they're in New Zealand and Namibia and South Africa and Singapore, and maybe they're not healers are sort of a little bit hidden, aren't they, in
yes,
places?
Yeah, absolutely. There are, there are many. There was I wrote a blog about 6 months ago. I've probably forgotten most of it, but we all know that film that Ang Lee did around about 20 years ago, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yes, yeah.
And that's an old that's an old Chinese saying, talking about the crouching tigers and the hidden dragons, the people who are absolutely amazing. They hide, they keep low, they keep quiet, but they are incredible in their power and their ferocity and their ability to do things. And there are many all over the world, wherever you go. I mean, Africa, all the countries in Africa, they have some amazing medicine and amazing spiritual arts.
Yes.
Most of which most people don't know about, because everything in Africa is kept quiet. We know about some of the things in Asia, and people know about some of the things in New Zealand. But they all have medicine people, spiritual people. They know about things that, some things I'm not allowed to talk about. I know about what happens in these countries, and there are amazing things that happen all over this world. So wherever people may be, they don't have to come to China, to England, or to Chinese medicine,
or have a website,
or any of that. They probably live next door to someone, or have had tea with someone who's absolutely incredible. We know of people who are absolutely incredible near them already, who can do amazing things, who just kind of remain unknown and never will be known. One of the stories I have of one of the guys I studied with he came over from Russia. And he studied with someone for a long, long time, and they had their falling out. And then he decided to go and find other Russian masters, who were unknown. And he spent a long time doing this. And he said he found some amazing masters who were just as good, if not better, than the one that he had spent time with. But he said these people didn't want to be found. They didn't want to be known, and they wanted to keep doing what they did. And these people would just train just a handful of people, 5, 6, 7 people, and they would be dedicated. They wouldn't ask for money, or they'd ask for very little money, or need very little, because they were passing on something that was greater than themselves, and that they felt that they were of service to something greater than themselves. And there are people like that everywhere, so it's just I think what's happened with Chinese medicine and Chinese masters is that they've been exposed. Not all of them, or not a lot of it, but a lot of the work has become known, which is why people like me in England in modern times can learn about something that's ancient, that happened 2,500 years ago in China, and totally a different part of the world. But yeah, there are many great people doing many great things everywhere.
That's very hopeful, Mir. That sort of really raises hope. And you talking today, actually, about all of these things, and especially the astronomy and things in the cosmos, and how we are all connected in some way to all the planets and things that exist. I mean, will you come again and talk to us about all of that?
Sure. No problem at all. No problem. It's they're very deep subjects, but it's just, I think the one thing we all have that we all probably know is that we all come from one. We all come from one source, and we all return to that one source. So whichever way we look at it, from whichever culture and time we look at it from, that was the one thing that an awful lot of people understood. And I think people understand now. So it's just, I'm happy to talk about that. That's not a problem at all.
We have so many things, and because you have so many different, strings to your bow, as they say, and expert in so many fields. And the thing is that people are craving this knowledge now, because whatever modern medicine has to offer in its brilliance, there are side effects that are uncurable sometimes. And what the natural path and the natural way offers is things that can be taken that don't offer side effects. So, I think it's a case of educating us in what actually the world is about. Because if we look in this small atom of our room, our house, our town, it actually, I don't know whether it was William Blake said that you can see the whole world in a grain of sand.
Yes.
And it's true. So I think we need to have that perception. We need to open the way to enlighten ourselves and those around us, in that we can manifest so many beautiful things, and there's so many knowledges, and every answer is within us.
Yes, that's right. There was I don't know, one of my friends told me, I don't know the actual story, but there's some, and I'm sure someone would know what the actual story is, but they were saying that, when they created all the answers to the universe, but they wanted to hide them from human beings, they thought, where can we hide this? Maybe the highest mountain. Maybe we should put the answers in the deepest sea. Maybe we should put it out in space. And then someone very clever said, no, what we need to do is put the answers inside of them. They will never look there.
Yes.
So it's just, yeah.
It's true. And it's like all the wise sages and masters say, the longest journey is to your heart.
Yes. Yeah.
You can go to the hemispheres, but to get to your heart, to that throne of knowledge and wisdom and love of the divine, the creator, is actually in your heart. And yet that's the most difficult and most, furthest point.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's incredible, isn't it? It matches with your story. And I really believe that. So,
yeah, so true. Yeah.
Beautiful.
We've got, there's a whole universe within ourselves, so if people don't have the money, time, inclination to go find people, I've been very fortunate. That's what I've been able to do in this lifetime. But if you're able to sit with yourself, there's a whole universe inside there that that's up for exploration. So it's we can find it, or at least we can search for it.
Absolutely. I mean, to begin with, that first step is the most important thing, and to keep walking. It doesn't matter how quickly. The point is to keep walking.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Just keep searching inside yourself, searching outside of it, and you'll find what you find.
It's true. So many universes that we are so unaware out there, but how many are there within us that we have left undiscovered because we're too busy eating fish and chips?
Yes.
Oh, dear. Oh, thank you so much, Mir. Really, it's so fascinating. I feel like I have a lesson of wise wisdom every time we speak. It's absolutely incredible, the knowledge that you have. And I want to really thank you, and of course, welcome you back again to come back and share that.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. And I must say, but what's really important is that any kind of wisdom or anything I have has come from my teachers and their teachers before them and them before them, and I know it's an overused phrase, but, we stand on the shoulders of giants, so all I'm able to do is basically put these things together from different brilliant people and tell you what they have told me. So it's just, it comes from others. It's come through time, and it's come from different generations, and it's come from other places. But it's nice to be able to speak to you about it here, and hopefully.
And you're a vessel. You're a wonderul vessel.
That's all.
We have to give credit to the person who's the messenger. Above all, yes, the wisdom, comes from the lineage of all these masters and saints. Probably, we don't know, but the fact that you have dedicated your life to being a vessel is quite amazing and quite wonderful. And I thank you for giving your service to mankind, really.
No problem. Thank you, Mimi.
Oh, before we go, where can people get hold of you?
They can go on to either one of my websites. I've got a Chinese medicine website, which is orientaltreatment.com, or the martial arts and Qigong website, which is warriorhealers.co.uk. And then, they can drop messages through there, or just find out a bit of what I do. I think I've got a list of my teachers there too, so they can look into some of the teachers, or they can contact me, and then I can give them the details. That's not a problem. But like most things, I try not to put everything up there.
No, I don't think. I think that's probably not even 1% of what there is.
Yeah, I'll put up what I think people can handle and what I think is acceptable.
Officially speaking.
Yeah, I'm allowed to put up official stuff, and then everything else is we speak about behind closed doors.
As and when needed, sort of on a need-to-know basis, as my friend always says to me. Maybe on a need-to-know basis, that's what it is. She always said that to me as we were growing up. And I never, she heard it from her parents, and I never really understood it until I grew up. And then if I've ever grown up, and I oh yes, that actually has a lot of sense. It's very wise actually. But also before we go, Mir, a couple of lines from you for people today that are listening, something to keep them going and to inspire them in these times.
Yes. One of the things that I've noticed from traveling around the world, and I'm sure you have as well, maybe, is that I tell people that people are good everywhere. I live and work in a small town in the middle of Bedfordshire in England, which can be quite insular. There are people around here or let's say have very rarely left the area. They've lived in this 3 or 4 square miles and don't leave the area at all. And what I tell them is that, listen, when you go around the world and you speak to people from other places, it's that we all want the same things. We're all, the vast majority of people are good people. People who have children want the same things for the children, whether they are in Palestine, whether they're in Israel, whether they're in Russia or New Zealand, whether they're in China, Taiwan, UK, USA, it doesn't matter. Brazil, they want the best for their children. Everyone wants their children to go to a good school. They want their children to be safe. They want their children to do well. Everyone wants to go on 2 holidays a year, maybe 3 holidays a year. They all want good health. They all want to see their friends. And I think what I found is that, there are so many good people, regardless of where people come from. Most people are good in most places, most of the time. And all people want kindness in their lives, and all people can be kind. And I think if we're all kinder to other people and if we're all gentler to other people, I think that will take an awful lot of the stress and tension and fear out of other people's lives. And, like we said earlier, smile at other people, smile to yourself, and just be kinder to yourself. And I think you'll find that actually we have way more in common with each other than not.
Yeah.
So it's just we're all the same. We're all one. Let's just let's act like it and be kind to each other. It's a good thing.
It's true. Beautiful advice, and something that we can do every single day of our life, and let us stop being afraid so much with people, because as you said, we're all in this together at this time. We're all in this journey of life together, whether that may have been 1,000, 2,000 years ago, or now in these times that the earth has never seen. But we're in this on this trip called life together.
Absolutely. And it's just there were scholars in China 2,500 years ago who wrote things, who kind of scribbled things down, carved things down into stone and bamboo, that have basically, made their way over 2,500 years and over thousands of miles to a little town in the middle of Bedfordshire, where someone who has of no importance is able to help people in the local area in modern times. It's amazing. We're all, so what we can do now, and the kindness and gentleness we show ourselves, can travel far and wide and affect people we will never, ever know or never meet. But that's what we should do, in my opinion, anyway.
It's very humbling, actually. It's very humbling when you think about it, that someone all those years ago gave this knowledge and served the people, so that thousands of years later, here we are taking benefit from that knowledge.
Yes, absolutely, for the greater good.
Wonderful. I feel very privileged now, actually. I do indeed. I really do. I think, my goodness, is it luck? But I didn't say anything. So I just say it's kismet. It's destiny. Yeah, it's meant to be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Mir, as always. And hopefully we will see you soon. Yes. And we can share lots of interesting and hopefully life-changing information and wise words to help people, to help all the listeners, to help myself, I have to say. But I wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you, Mimi. And you too, and to all your listeners as well.
All right then. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Mir Abbas Ali, always a delight to hear his wisdom and hopefully put it to some use in our lives. Thank you again for joining me and sharing part of your life in these moments with me and my guests. You are so appreciated. Until next time, take care and lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.